You will never get your entire organization into an A+ category if you don't pull off of operations and become the person that's working on the business.
You're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Smart people would know how to use all these different tools. They
Start with something small.
You'll never get your entire organization if you don't pull off operations.
Don't give up.
It can be as small as that.
I think you guys are gonna have our last today.
Welcome everybody to the Delegate That podcast show. This is our first official episode. I have my friend who is an inspiration here, JoBen Barkey. Did I get her last name right?
You did. The key to the bar, the fun guy. The party doesn't start till the guy with the bar key shows up.
The Barkey, I got you. That's awesome. And he's truly an inspiration. His stories are amazing, from business to helping people across the world. It's phenomenal. This man is truly an inspiration to me and has so much knowledge to share here in the podcast. So without further ado, JoBen, share a little bit about your background for people that don't know you, and looking forward to this episode.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I grew up in the Amazon rainforest. I know I look like an Amazonian, but I lived in the Amazon rainforest till I was 18 years old. Moved to North America on my own to go to university and pursue a higher education. I came here with one pair of women's Guess jeans, 2 T-shirts, and a pair of borrowed shoes and $15 in my pocket. That was it. So the stories we talk about, the things that we've been able to do as a family, if I could get there from where I started, so can you. And then after university, ended up a few years later moving down to Southern California, starting my first businesses. And within that system, we now own a bunch of franchises, and we have additional things that we do, which you touched a little bit on. So that's me.
Phenomenal. And as you know very well, people are burnt out, entrepreneurs are burnt out, working in the business, not on the business. And the goal of this podcast is to really discuss the art and the science of delegation. And so with that in mind, how do you delegate? How do you grow your company by delegating while keeping the excellence?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is having a plan when you start out, right? You have to decide what you want to do with your company. Do you want to build a job, or do you want to build an organization? Job is a lot more profitable a lot early on, but it requires you to be there every day, right? I'll use the example of 2 brothers. One, they both start shoe repair companies. One, we'll call him Tom. Tom starts a shoe repair company, and the quality is exceptional. He's the guy that fixes all the shoes. He maybe hires someone to help him with the counting and stuff, but he does all of the repairs of all the shoes, right? Super profitable early on, works out of his garage. His brother, we'll call him Sam, Tom and Sam. So Sam starts out, and Sam is like, okay, I'm passionate about this, but I want to build an organization, right? So he opens 1 location, 2, 3, 4. He's got 4 locations that are opened. They both repair shoes, both of the stores. When Tom is out on vacation or at a friend's wedding, no shoes are getting repaired. When I say his name was Sam,
Yep.
when Sam's out on vacation or at a wedding or something, the same amount of shoes are being repaired. That sounds great. It just takes a lot more work and intentionality to build out the 4 than it does to build out the 1. And it might take 4. It might take 4 times the business to generate the same amount of income. So there's different ways that we get compensated from our businesses, right? We get compensated financially, hopefully. Entrepreneurs are all in a different economy from everyone else. We're in the economy of results. So if it's working, we're getting paid. If it's not working, you can be there all day, every day, and not get $1, right? Most people exchange their time for money. We exchange results for money. We also exchange results for time. We're able to do that as entrepreneurs. And so we're able to buy our time. Now that means that we have to hire people. We have to have other people that fix shoes. And we have to put in processes in place. We have to have training and onboarding systems in place so that we make sure that it's done to our standards. But those two perspectives on how to build a business are very, very different, and they're going to end in very, very different places. Neither one is wrong. One is lower risk. If you're doing all the shoe repairs, it's a lot lower risk, but it has a lower ceiling, and it requires a lot more of your time. The other one carries a lot more financial risk, but the ceiling is much, much higher. And the payout is going to be that you get to go surfing when the waves are good and shoes are still getting repaired. So that's kind of the first thing you have to decide is which direction you want to go. And then I believe your question was, how do you delegate well? Was that the question you asked?
Delegate and make sure things are going right. Not like you were describing. Maybe it's not going to be 100% well in the beginning,
Yep.
but what is the quote from the Martel? 80% done by someone else is 100% freaking awesome, is his quote, which I think is along the lines of what you're saying in the beginning, but then later is what I understand, you get to the excellence.
So you have to have the fortitude, the mental strength to let people fail forward because you did not do it exceptionally well on day one. Either on day one of launching your own business or on day one of apprenticing in someone else's, you were not as good as you are today, right? So you have to create space where people aren't going to feel like the hammer's coming down for every small mistake. That's a really challenging place to work long term. My business is character and skill development for 2 to 8 year olds within the environment of soccer, right? And so when we were first starting out, I coached tons of classes. And every class that I coached was A with 100 pluses next to it. Because there was no chance that every child wasn't going to have an unbelievable experience. And even on my bad days, I'm still going to show up and just kill it, right? But if I'm doing that, who's training the other staff? If I'm doing that, who's answering the phone when the parents call? If I'm doing that, who's sending out the notifications for the upcoming new season, right? And so what you have to be willing to do is you have to say, okay, having a section of your company delivering A plus 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 services and a section delivering C minus D plus services is not as good as an entire company that is leveled up to B plus, working towards A minus and then A plus. You will never get your entire organization into an A plus category if you don't pull off of operations and become the person that's working on the business, right? So for us, it was like, okay, I have to be willing to let 25 schools have a little bit less quality coaching. But then I can go and I can evaluate and I can provide feedback and I can help the coach level up over the course of 2-3 months and become an exceptional coach. There's an apprenticeship cycle that we love to follow. It's I do, you watch, I do, you help, you do, I help, you do, I watch.
Mhm.
Well, if you're doing all the doing, you're never getting to the other steps and you haven't actually onboarded your staff very well, right? So first they have to see what your expectation is. And so by coming and watching, you should scare them a little bit. That shoe should be perfect, right? The soccer class should be amazing. Like they should be like, oh, there's a high bar here. So you want to show them the high bar. You can't scale your business out if you're the only high bar in your company. And so what I decided to do was I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull off classes and I'm going to try as quickly as possible to identify who are my 2 to 3 of my initial 9, 10, 11, 12 coaches. Who are my 2 to 3 that are almost there or are already there? They're at least an A level class. Okay. Everyone does it a little bit differently. I'm going to have them watch me coach my 1 to 2 classes a week. That's all I'm going to take. And then I'm going to have people go and watch those other 2 coaches. And then I'm going to set them loose and I'm going to evaluate them, right? After going through the apprenticeship process, then I'm going to be able to evaluate them. Then I'm going to train other people to evaluate them. Then I'm going to have them evaluate each other, the top people, so that we get a standardized evaluation, right? And then we're going to document it all and have processes, right? So that's how you maintain excellence, is by documenting everything. Everybody hates process. Everybody hates documenting, especially people like me who are visionaries, we're creatives, we're like always thinking of the next big thing. And going back to something from back there is a nightmare. Like that is like living in purgatory. We do not want to do that. The gift that somebody gave me at an EOS conference, they were doing a breakout on process and I did not want to go. My integrator was like, you are going to the process breakout. So I went to the process breakout and up on stage, they said, this was like 2018 or 19 or something like that. They're like, all right, raise your hand if you're a visionary in the room. Yeah, hands go up, right? Keep your hand up if somebody told you you had to come to this training. Almost all the hands stay up, right? And so he goes, here's the thing I want you to know. Every visionary, it just cringes at the thought of documenting and processes. until you're set free by actually understanding what that does. So right now it's in your head. How annoying is it when the same person comes and asks you 30 times the same question, how to do the same thing? It's super annoying, and you lose patience, and work satisfaction and life satisfaction for that employee is not going to be very high. And it's not going to be high for you either. Every time they knock on your door, you're like, oh my gosh, like, why do I still have this person working for me? They said, here's the truth. It's in your head. People like to say, do you see what I'm talking about? Like, nobody can see it. You just said it out loud. Half of us are visual learners and half of us are audio learners. So right away, half of the population isn't retaining long-term what you said out loud. Half of them aren't,
Mhm.
right? And they could be very high quality and high caliber employees, but you're just verbally telling them, and that is not how they learn how to do anything, right? So you document it one time. So now instead of 30 times someone coming in, you take it from your brain, you put it down here, you document 20% of the process. You don't write this huge long thing that no one's going to read. You document 20% of it, because 20% gets you 80% there, right?
Yeah.
And so for most of us, if we have that 20% outline, it triggers the memory of the thoughts and the conversations that we have. So now that person that was coming in over and over again, now they knock on the door and they're like, hey, just wanted to check in. You're like, did you see the document I sent you last week? They're like, oh yeah, have a look at it and then come and talk to me if you have any questions. Well, guess what? Having that outline, they're just going to follow that outline, and chances are the questions are going to be a small percentage of what they were before, and very quickly they're going to move on to no longer asking questions about that. And so the presenter was like, wouldn't it be great if that employee who you love but don't always like because they bother you all the time, what if they never came and knocked on the door again to ask a question 2, 3, 4 times?
Yeah.
And he said the only way you get there is if you document it and get it out of your head, because you're storing the library in your head. They have to come to the library to figure out how to do it. You've created this and you don't like it, so fix it,
Yeah.
right? And so a few things in there that changed everything for me was document 20%, because I was like, I had done like one process at that point, and it was pages and pages for a simple task that no one's gonna do it. And I'm like, oh, I gotta remember, like, turn on the computer. Like, that's how the into the minutia I was, right? So
Right.
that is how we start to standardize the execution of our service, is by developing processes and documenting what we do. And then I allow each person, as they gain more and more seniority, they get to feed into that document and change it, and it evolves, and to the point where now the operations for our company, I can't do them. It has moved beyond me. I am not an operations person, and so it has outgrown me. But guess what? There's a document with processes in it where I could go and I could execute the job. Not as good as someone wired to do it. I'd be living in my purgatory of don't like it and not good at it, which is almost as bad as really good at it and hate it, because we get stuck there for way too long. But I can now go pull up a process and I can execute it well, even though it's not my skill set. And isn't that amazing when people who aren't naturally wired to fulfill a role or to execute a task, they can still do it pretty darn well because you've documented it well. So that's one of the main ways that we maintain is we follow that apprenticeship cycle to make sure they feel comfortable and confident. And then we have processes that they can go back and check in on. And man, it just gives you so much confidence when you feel like your team is just executing all the time. And it's simply because you've actually documented how to do it. Now, the final piece of the component is putting measurables in there, right? Because if you ask them things like, "Did you have a good class?" They're like, "Yeah, great class." Okay, great. We put things in there like one of our core values is we are fun. We're a kids soccer class. We want to be fun.
Yeah.
Internally, we define that as no drama. If you're a drama person, and it's just not going to be a good fit here. We don't subscribe to that. We don't think it helps the culture at all. But another way that we execute that is we have in our evaluation of a coach, did the children laugh at least 3 separate times during the course of the class? Because we want you to be silly. These are 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. They love silly. And so be silly, like cut loose, let your inner child go. And so we made that a criteria. So creating a measurable, right? Did the kids laugh? Well, I think some of them laughed. Did they laugh 3 times? That's a measurable, right? So using numbers, creating measurable, um, creating measurables that we can actually track and say like, yeah, we're creating this many laughs every week. How cool, right? So it's simple math. We say that our desire is to be a remarkable experience. Well, kids go home and talk about a class that they laughed in. They do. And so if we have X amount of kids in the program, and we have 10,000 kids in a program throughout the course of a year, so we have 10,000 children playing, and they each are playing for about 10 classes per season. That's 10,000 times 10 times 3 laughs per class minimum. We have created so many smiles and so much laughter, and we can calculate it, and then we can like celebrate that at the end of the year. Like, guys, we made kids who some of them are going through incredibly hard times, because that's what happens over the course of a year. But we generated this many laughs from this many kids. How cool is that? Let's celebrate. So I hope that answers your question.
Man, that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And one thing way back to the beginning that you mentioned, the Tom and the Sam example that I was thinking, and because I think sometimes some entrepreneurs or self-employed folks, whatever, they might even feel a little bad because they're like, well, I don't want to grow, but these guys are talking that I need to grow. And I think that goes back even to like self-awareness, knowing if you are a macro oriented person, want to grow a big organization. Some guys or girls are very micro oriented and want to be the craftsman, or be the good at the craft, and that's okay too. It's okay as long as you know the costs of that, but it's just, I think sometimes that can get missed too.
100%. Like, that's what we started out with, is like, you need to cast a vision for yourself of where you're going. How do you do that? Clarity breaks. Many times we feel like going to our favorite coffee shop with an empty notepad and no real agenda is a complete waste of time. It's not, especially in the early stages of launching, which is when we do it the least. In the early stages of launching, we should be revisiting, recalibrating. Are we executing what I thought we were going to do? Have we pivoted? Do I need to document that pivot? Do I need to reprioritize and reset goals because we've pivoted to a new idea, right? For example, if you start out and you're fixing all those shoes, and you say, I want to do 100 shoes a year. Well, that's a great goal. Maybe I don't know shoes. I don't know how long it takes. Maybe that's a great goal. We'll say a quarter, 100 shoes a quarter. Maybe that's a great goal if you're a solopreneur and you're fixing all the shoes. But if you add 4 locations and 4 different people fixing, and your goal is still 100 shoes, you're going to go out of business pretty quickly. Your goal needs to now become probably 500. We say in partnerships, 1 + 1 can't equal 2. Otherwise, why are you in business together? 1 + 1 has to equal 3. When you expand your locations, you can either improve top line, or you can centralize some of the services and then reduce the cost of service by having like 1 location call center instead of 4, right? So I think that there's huge value in sitting down with that blank piece of paper, writing out your goals. I have a really good friend. His name is Scott Sustad, and he still has a piece. It's a little 9x11 little piece of paper. It's got sketch drawings on it as part of his business plan. Circles around things, cloud shapes. It's got arrows. It's got bold print stuff. It's got highlighter. It's like, it's not a professional document. They still go back to that and they say, this is the core of our vision when we started. Isn't it cool where we are today? So you revisit that, document it again. We talk about process, right? Building a company is a process. So document the process to build your company, because when you start your new location or your next company and you didn't document anything, you're trying to go off memory, good luck. And so one of the gifts to me as an entrepreneur was finally understanding that the things I hate doing, someone else loves doing. And so if you can ever get into an experience where you're doing the 4 quadrants, right? You're doing the delegate and elevate exercise, where you're figuring out what you do in a day, and then you're putting everything into 4 categories, or a week or a month or a year. 4 categories. Love it, really good at it. Love it, not so good at it. Really good at it, but hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Bad at it, don't like it, right? The bottom one's the easiest one to get rid of, usually.
Mm-hmm.
Although we might feel the most guilt about that one because we assume everybody else hates it too, right? So if you can do that with other people, if you can be around other entrepreneurs and you can go through and do that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to sit around a table with other entrepreneurs. You're going to share your Delegate and Elevate tool, documenting what you do, things you don't like. And you're going to see that you said, I hate doing that and I have to do it all the time. It sucks. It's soul sucking. I hate it. And somebody else wrote that down in their quadrant of, I love doing it. I can't wait to do more of it, right? And that is for early entrepreneurs, early stages, that's often super illuminating and eye-opening, is like, holy crap, I'm not punishing anyone. My first big hire was a director of coaching out in the field, the thing I loved doing, so that I could have more time to work on admin, answering phone calls, answering emails, which I hated because I just simply couldn't get it done. So I'm like, okay, I got to hire somebody to do this so I can keep doing this. Well, guess what? Our quality on the field dropped because it wasn't me holding people accountable anymore. And more time doing accounting didn't make it better. It didn't make us, it didn't make the phone calls get answered faster. It didn't make the emails get answered faster. The minute I switched it, went back out in the field and hired someone in the office, now 30 hours a week was taking 10 hours a week. And so that's my encouragement, is like, do those exercises, go out to your favorite coffee shop. You're not being lazy, you're being creative, detach from the day-to-day operations. Sometimes in the early days, it has to be a Saturday, like it has to be 6 p.m. at a coffee shop because you're just doing everything. But that is the way that you move forward. And in the early days, that is how you actually decide. That's the time where you sit down and decide, like, which direction do I want to go with this? Do I want more profitability early and I'm going to sacrifice time? Or do I want less profitability and I'm going to get my time down the road? Like, I'm going to get paid, right? In time and in money. So that's my answer to that. Clarity break, all those things.
I love it. Now, touching a little bit on hiring folks remotely, right? So offshore, virtual assistants from all levels. What's been your experience? Because for early entrepreneurs, especially that have low, capital availability, it's a easy it's a easy way, right? So, any tips there, or what's been your experience?
Yeah, has to be right person, right seat. Doesn't matter where you're hiring them from. And it doesn't hurt you to hire from a different place if it's right person, right seat. Um, you can't cut a corner and hire wrong person, wrong seat if it's virtual or from a distance. Like, it doesn't matter if they're close or nearby. I'm not saying it very clearly, but whether they're here locally or they're remote, right person, right seat is super important. How do you get the right seat? That's GWC. Do they get the job? Do they want the job? Do they have the capacity to execute it, right? And you want someone that wakes up in the morning and they're just like, I love accounting. Like, you want that person, right? That's the right seat on the bus, right? So first you have to make sure you have the right seat on the bus. Right person isn't a valuation of character. It's not. It has nothing to do with character or quality of individual. It's mostly, are they aligned with the vision and the direction of where the organization is going? And so for me, with our hires, when I sit down and we're doing our interview, one of our core values is help first, right? And so we do about a 45-minute interview. The first 15 minutes, I actually tell them everything that they need to know that I wish I knew when I was out in the workforce applying for jobs to get the next job. I'm going to help you first. If this isn't the right fit, or if this is a short-term job, I'm going to give you the keys to go get the job you really want, right? And we tell them things like, in the old days, they used to make you sit down in a lobby for a bit just to remind you that your time wasn't quite as important as their time. If they could set it up where you could walk down an echoey hallway with footsteps, it was just to remind you how little you were. And then you go into the interview office, that person's like, their seat's raised up a bit, you're down low. It's just like, you're a little person. You'd be lucky to be here, right? Here's the reality. When you go in, they can usually figure out pretty quickly if you're a good candidate. At that moment, so if you have the confidence and you know you're a good candidate, at that moment, the whole power dynamic of the interview flips. Only they don't want you to know that. They will do anything to not screw this up. They're trying to make the job look great. They really want you. They're like, don't put my foot in my mouth. Don't put my foot in the mouth. You think the pressure's on you because they've made you feel that way as the applicant, but really you are a high quality applicant. They've seen a lot of applicants. They know that you're great. So go in there and own that. How do we own it? I tell them, look online for value statements, either their core values or something they say is important to them, and come in with 2 questions to ask them, because you're going to find out really quickly if those are core values, which they filter through, they hire through, they fire through, they have their reviews done through those filters. That's core values. or if they're core aspirations. Core aspirations are cute little things on the wall. It's a cat hanging from a tree and it says, "We hang in there," right? It's an eagle and it's like, "We choose to soar to higher heights." Like, it's that type of catchy little thing that's like right above the urinal. It's like, okay, this is a core aspiration, but nothing in the business actually is filtered through these things. So for us, one of our core values is we pursue excellence, right? We have a growth mindset. And so I say, if you come into my company and you ask me, like, "Yeah, I do have some questions," because a good interviewer will say, "Do you have any questions for us?" If they say, "Yeah, I do have some questions." So I was wondering, like, I really want to be great at this. Working with young children, I really want to be great at this. How do I show up as an excellent coach? Like, how do I chase that excellence? Well, first off, I'm like, "Oh man, you speak my language," and so you've already like convinced me that we talk the same language. Then I'm going to give you an answer, and you're going to listen, and you're going to hear. Am I making it up on the spot, or does it sound like this is what we eat, sleep, and breathe, which would be a core value? My answer would be, it's actually quite simple. You just got to love kids and be patient with the ones who challenge you. And then you have to prepare for every session you run and be on time. On time is 15 minutes early. That's it. And the reason is because no parent or child cares if you prepared like crazy, but then showed up late. You were late. No child or parent cares if you showed up super early. All the cones are in a perfect straight line, but you didn't prepare. It's just a gong show because you know what? You didn't prepare. What are you doing leading this class? And so, um, we tell them in the first 15 minutes, like, help first. This is how you get your dream job. Go in like that. Demand that they're aligned with your core values. Ask them the questions to make sure they are. That's the first 15 minutes. The next 15 minutes, we tell the story of who we are. And who we are on the surface is, a bunch of individuals that teach 2 to 8-year-olds how to kick a ball straight. That is not very rewarding for very long. 2-3 weeks, and you're like, "Okay, I'm over it. I've seen enough temper tantrums. I had a snot bubble that went out and back in, and I gagged in my mouth the whole class." Like, it's like, it just doesn't carry you. So the next 15 minutes, we tell the story and we say, "Hey, when we go from 8 kids to 9 kids, that kid is pure profit. What we finance with that is not a sailboat. It's not a bigger house for the owner. It's not more vacations. What we finance with that is digging a well in Africa. What we finance that is paying a teacher's salary at a school that we open in Africa. What we finance with that is buying more seeds for the students that are coming through our agriculture school in Africa. What do we finance with that? It's adding more taxis to our taxi company in Africa that serves as a revenue generation tool to pay all the people that work at these organizations, but also it's an underground ambulance service because there's a civil war going on where we work, and the 9 villages that we serve have no medical help within an hour and a half. And so we are an underground ambulance service. So when you add another kid to your classes, it's not another kid. It's another well. It's another kid eating. It's another kid safe from malaria. It's another kid safe from cholera. And so we tie them into who we actually are in the next 15 minutes. And then we have 15 minutes of just the X's and O's of what it looks like to be a great coach, right? So that's how we live out our core values, even within the interview process. So I'm looking for people. I'll do a lot of times that is the first round of the interviews, and it's online, and there's maybe 3-4 people on it. We're doing a group interview, right? Well, I'm watching them because some of them are like checked out. They're this one where you're like, and they're on their phone, and you're like, "I'm talking to you, and I know you're on your phone in an interview," right? They would never do it to your face, hopefully, but they feel comfortable doing it on online, or they've just kind of glazed over, right? But some people are like this, like they're leaned in like this. Some people are wiping tears, and they're like, because we show a little video that shows some of the work we're doing in Africa, and
Wow.
and we ask for like, "Hey, what's one feedback?" And from the feedback, I can tell if they're aligned with us, right? Because some people are like, "Oh, I love soccer, and it's a way to give back, teaching kids soccer." And then the next person goes, "Man, I just feel like even on my hardest days, going to work is going to be different when I know that there's a kid in Africa whose life was saved because we were able to add another taxi. And I'm very excited to work here." That's a different answer, right? That's alignment. And so we're looking for value alignment. And we do that we do that using a people analyzer tool from EOS, right? Where we go through and we give a score. We put each core value up above, and then we put the names of all of our staff, and then we give a plus, plus, minus, minus, depending on how closely aligned they are. And a plus isn't an always, because they don't have to always have my core values. A plus is usually. A plus minus is often, and then a minus is rarely. And so it's pretty hard to hit rarely, and then we don't say like every single one has to be a plus. We'll say like, okay, if there's 4 core values, we need 3 pluses and 1 plus minus, no zeros. A zero is an automatic. This isn't working out, right? And so that's how we get people that can then execute excellent soccer shots classes. Because when I go to a soccer shots class, I'm digging a well. And I want other people to go to soccer shots class and be digging a well. So let's get back to the VAs. It doesn't matter if they work here in Orange County or on Oahu, where our businesses are, or if they're in Brazil, which is where our VAs are. When I got on the call with our VA, who's exceptional, her name's Helena, when I got on with her, after 1 month of working together, I gave her feedback about the ways that she was showing up in a way that was aligned with the values of who we are and how much we appreciated that. And then I shared with her some stories about how her work was helping us extend, grow, and invest in the people in Cameroon in the middle of the Civil War. And her response was, man, I've always had a passion for kids, and I'm not in a place where I have the means to help people in Africa. And so to be a part of it, to know that like when I do data entry and it's error free, when I help set up new seasons and I do it error free, when I'm on top of emails and when I'm quick to respond in a way that helps other people execute their jobs well, like I'm digging a well. She's like, this is a dream come true. That is how you find remote workers and local workers who are going to show up over and over and over and over again. And they're going to love what they do, right? Because they're not just entering data. And for me, that sounds like a nightmare. For some people, that's exceptional. Don't let me talk to anybody. I just want to enter data. Data has no feelings. I don't want to deal with that, right? But just entering data in a spreadsheet is not long-term fulfilling for really anyone. It has to be about more, right? And I would suggest that for most people, being about more has to do with having a giving spirit. It's one of the most rewarding things that you can do with your life is show up well for other people, friends, your community, strangers, right? Show up well for other people, make that a habit, and you will attract people who want to be around that and want to be like that. And now all of a sudden you're surrounded with friends, family members, and employees who want to be like that. What is it? How much better is life when you're around mostly everyone in your immediate circle who just wants to help people and just feels a sense of fulfillment? Well, guess what? When you break your leg and you split your tibia open and you have to move to another house, 40 people show up to help you move. That's what happened to us. I could not walk. I was bedridden. I couldn't walk for 4 months, and 40 people showed up. I had people from my men's league soccer team because at that soccer team, I was dry. Oh, we forgot the jerseys. I'll go get the jerseys. No problem. I'll drive 30 minutes out of my way and get it. Oh, we don't have any cones. Hold on. Let me see if I got some cones in our shed for training. Right. I love it. I love helping people. People showed up for us. The coach of our team was in my daughter's room putting together a bed with a drill and a bunch of stuff. Like it was like people just show up for you because you've shown up for them. And when you're running a company in the service industry, highly recommend building that as part of your brand. Help first, right? And so for us, I'm giving a talk at the FBR conference that's coming up, the Franchise Business Review. It's the biggest, it's the go-to source. If you're interested in buying a franchise, it's the go-to source to kind of gain an understanding of that franchise compared to other franchises. You put in search things like under $10,000, no employees, all these different length of time to start up. Like you put in all these things, what industry, and it helps you filter out like which ones are performing well. It does surveys of all the franchisees and employees, and it asks them for job set who loves working within their franchise system. All that stuff. It's the place to go. In 2022, I believe, my wife and I won um, the Franchise Business Review Rockstar of the Year award in the Giving Back category, out of 300,000 possible franchisees,
Wow.
which is awesome. So now I get to go. This is the first conference where they allowed people to apply to come and be speakers. And so I was like, oh, why not? So I applied, and next month I'm going to be at the Franchise Business Review on stage, on the main stage, delivering a talk about the 4 T's of giving: time, treasure, talent, and then my additional one is talk, right? Time, treasure, talent, 100 books have been written on it. Talk is the fourth one that I put in there. The point I'm making to everybody, and we're going to have some takeaways. How can we go home and execute this in our own business and in our families and friend circles? But one of the points that I'm driving home very early on in that talk is like, we're digging wells. We have an agriculture school. We have an elementary middle school. We have a taxi service and an underground. We have all this stuff, right? It started with a donation of a few used soccer balls. So it doesn't like the end picture doesn't have to happen on day one. If we set the end picture of where we want to be and we say this is what giving looks like,
Mhm.
here's the problem. It's crippling. It's not possible yet. And so what can I start with? Do I have financial resources? In the beginning, probably not. Treasure, I'm not going to give a lot of treasure because it's building the brand, right? Do I have a talent? I do. And so one of my early donation things was I traveled internationally and I taught people about how to build small businesses. I was doing lectures on it. I was teaching people how to do it. As simple as having 2 separate bank accounts, right? Nobody had
Mhm.
that. So I was like, okay, we need a business bank account that we pay ourselves from. We can't mix and mingle. Budgeting, teaching that basic stuff, right? So I had a talent that I could teach. Time. Working at a soup kitchen doesn't take a lot of talent. Put the ladle in, lift it up, put it in a bowl, but it takes time, and time is valuable. They say that at the executive level, at the successful entrepreneur level, that your hourly is a minimum of $500 an hour. You go for 3 hours, you've donated the equivalent of $1,500 that could have been applied towards your own business. That is significant. If you don't have dollars in your bank account, but you can squeeze out 6 to 9 p.m. to work at a soup kitchen, that is an incredible way to lay a foundation as a giving organization. And then you invite your team to come along with you. You don't make it part of the job. You don't make it part of promotions. You don't do anything. You just invite, hey, who wants to come? And you're gonna find that doing things like that improves employee retention. And here's the problem. Here's the little secret. Employee turnover. People know this. Employee turnover is expensive. If people buy into who you are and why you're in business rather than just what you do, then employee retention is longer. You maintain operational fluency when you maintain the people who are doing the job, as long as you've hired well to get them in there, right? Every time you get a new person in, your fluency drops. They don't speak the language. They don't understand how to do the job. They don't speak the language of the role yet, right? Not
Yeah.
fluently. You believe they have the capacity to learn the language of the role, but they don't speak it yet. And so every time you have turnover, think about being in a country and how long it takes to communicate when you're using Google Translate versus just speaking, right? I speak 2 languages. When I'm in one of those, when I'm in a country that speaks one of those 2, I'm just smooth. I'm having a great time. I'm joking around. I get better prices. It's just a much easier version of life when you're fluent in the language of the role or the community that you're in. And so think about it that way. Every time you're bringing in somebody new, even if they're a great core value fit, and even if you believe the capacity is there to learn the language of the role, they still don't speak it yet, and you're going to lose money because of that. So when I talk about giving, money can be tight and you can still invest in giving as an organization, and that can lead to higher employer retention, which leads to more revenue in your bank account. I hate to bring it up only because it sounds a little bit like I'm talking about a self-serving thing. It's a byproduct, and doing good things should have a good byproduct. Um, here's the other side of that coin. I'll finish this with this. The other side of that is if you're just doing it to try to put some more money in the bank account to try to keep people longer, guess what? Now you're a core aspirations company. You're not a core values company, and a core aspirations company gets sniffed out by everyone pretty quickly. And so you're gonna be like, I'm checking all the boxes. JoBen said to check these boxes, and everybody would stay. No, it's got to be within your core values. So I'll give you an example. to tie it together. So if you're doing some sort of program and you want to talk about hydration, the importance of hydration, right? You give everybody in your staff a water bottle, an Nalgene water bottle. It's got hashtag drink more water on it, right? You're like, yeah, like, okay, cool. What if you found a company that was digging wells in a country where people had limited access to water resources, and you dug a well in a village and you told that story? That is that is powerful, right? So now you have everybody in your staff and you've given them a water bottle and you said, please post a picture on your personal Instagram account. We're trying to grow our brand. No one's going to post a picture for an Nalgene water bottle. But if you're like, guys, if we can get a little bit more profitable, if we can get a little bit more set aside into this giving account, we can do well every single year. Wouldn't that be amazing? And if you guys want to fundraise and come along as part of it, you guys can join me. Anybody in the company who fundraises and provides your own transportation and means to get to the location, you can all be a part of this. The reason I say that is because we run a nonprofit, a 501c3, and our commitment is we do not give a dollar to anyone in a developed country. We don't. It's all saved for developing countries. So when $5 comes into our nonprofit, it doesn't, it doesn't go, $1 to the general manager, $2 to the accountants, and like 30 cents to that kid that we put the picture up who's just asking for water. It's 100%. That came from an article I read in the Tampa Bay Times in 2013 that highlighted 50 nonprofits in the US that give less than 4% of the money they raise to the actual project. So I started thinking, I was like, okay, so that's $40,000 for every million that they raise. 40,000. Now I know that a $40,000 project investment goes a very long ways in a developing country. I know that. So I know you can create a whole lot of great pictures that look like you did a whole lot of work. You know how far $1 million goes? And so what I decided was I was going to build a for-profit company that self-financed a nonprofit, and we were going to put $50,000 a year in there no matter what, because I wanted to beat every $1 million company that was on that list. And so that became our goal, your BHAG. And I'm telling you, I come from humble means. And so $5,000 a year sounds like an insane amount of money to give away. That's what it sounded like at the time. But when I put $50,000 up there, it was the same as saying 50 million. It was not a number that I wasn't getting paid $50,000 a year for years in the early years of our company. My wife and I were on food stamps, and we slept on air mattresses for 2 years because we couldn't afford beds. And we had kids. We had 4 kids in 5 years as we launched the business. But what I'm telling you is living out your values like that, setting that goal for your staff to look at, and then they see that you execute it. Those are core values, not core aspirations. We were living them out every day. I knew I couldn't give away $50,000, but I could give away time, and I could give away my talent, and I could give away talk. I could tell people about opportunities to help other people. So that is the story that we tie our staff into, and it does not matter if they work here or if they're international. We're very fortunate. We use a really good company, your company, to locate great VAs, and you guys have a great process for making sure that the GWC is there, the get it, the want it, the capacity to do it. You guys manage that, so we don't have to worry about it. And all we're thinking about at that point is, are they a value fit? And so that's a plug for going through an organization rather than going on Craigslist or something and trying to find your own, is when you go through an organization, their responsibility to you is to provide somebody that GWCs it. That's their responsibility. And if they don't get it, they don't want it, and they don't have the capacity to do the role, then their responsibility is to get you someone that does. And so it eliminates that whole side. And now the only key to success that you have to focus on is, do they care about the things your organization cares about? Are they aligned with it? And that takes time. That's a process to figure out how to have those conversations, how to add the leading questions that help you figure out if they're actually caring or if they're texting on the phone during the interview, right? But when we went back to Elena and I had that conversation, her response again was like, I've always wanted to help people, and I've always wanted to have an impact like that. And so it's just like, this is such a rewarding job. And so that I think is one of the reasons why we feel like she's part of our team, not a VA we outsource to, but she's insourced. She just happens to live in a different country. The other side of it too, and I want to give this plug to people who are considering VAs. Hire them full time. You will find a way to fill their time. You will, I promise you. In our annual meeting, they told me, JoBen, we need help. We need one person. Within, it was like 8 days, we were asking for the second person, and both of them at 40 hours a week. So you will fill their time. These are people, and they want employment. They want to have enough money to pay their bills. If you're hiring someone at 10 hours a week, and somebody else comes along and says, hey, we'll give you 40, it is reasonable to expect that they will go to the 40-hour opportunity, just like you would if you needed to pay bills. And so, and cobbling together 4 different companies of 10 hours, guess what? Nobody actually works 10 hours. We itemize and say this is worth 10 hours. We do that as entrepreneurs. We're like, 40-hour work week. No, you're not. You're working 100-hour work week. Like, start tracking your actual hours, right? And so if you want retention, which for every employee, it doesn't matter where they are, here or far away, retention equals fluency, operational fluency. If you want that, then invest a little bit up front. Do the 40 hours. And I promise you, you're going to spend way less than if you do it locally, and you're going to get a really high caliber when you take the time and you put in the effort to research an organization that will actually match you with someone that can do the job, is wired to do it, right? I say, like, you don't want a super creative person doing your data entry, but you also don't want someone who's just by the numbers doing all your social media posts. So there's a different criteria for each role. And that's what I loved about working with you guys, is you guys actually asked, like, what are the key deliverables that you want from this? Like, what is the role going to execute? Because we need to find the person who's wired to love doing it. Love doing it, is good at it, right? And so I love your guys' process for delivering that. It takes a big stressor off of trying to figure out, can this person in this other country do what I'm wanting to do? The other part of it too is there's a little bit of I don't know, hesitation, trepidation, a little bit of worry about, well, what if I hand this over and then they just like flake on me? Like, now we're screwed. Like I told you earlier, I don't know how to do all the things in operations anymore. The gift to me was a conversation with somebody that where I was just thinking out loud, and I'm like, you know what? I bet the CEO of Delta can't fly a plane. His job is to keep all the pilots in the air, but I bet he can't fly a plane. So I am the CEO of a much smaller Delta. I don't have to know how to do all the other stuff. I don't have to be a pilot. My job is to keep the pilots in the air, right? And so that's what's nice about bringing in an organization that delivers VAs is, if that VA ghosts on you, there's an organization that is going to work their butt off to replace that as quickly as possible. And it's going to look a lot like they're going to use their own VAs who they trust to step in and be the Band-Aid to make sure that it works until they get the person trained up and ready to go. They are going to be responsible for making sure that you have the person that you need, because things happen. Like sometimes people sometimes people have to leave last minute for things totally out of their control. A death in the family, their own illness, a move. And so if you have an organization that is going to manage that turnover and help replace it, know exactly what you want, because you've been with them for a little bit, you've explained it already, it takes a huge stressor off. And so can you find a cheaper version by going on your own to, like, I don't even know if this is a real website, We Help, but going to something like that and putting in the hours you need and the tasks you need, is it cheaper? Yes. Is cheaper often worse? Yes. We see it over and over again, but then in business, we try to convince ourselves, no, it's just a good deal. It's going to be just as good. It's not. So let the professionals determine fit from a capacity standpoint, and then your job is to determine fit from a value standpoint.
I love it, man. No, I appreciate the unexpected plug there. I know we're hitting the top of the hour here. I told everybody that you were inspiring, so now you guys know why this man is a beast. Such inspiring stories there, JoBen. As we get closer to the end here, four questions I wanted to ask you, more on the round, rapid fire type of
You got it.
situation. What impact has this whole thing about learning about delegation has had in your personal life is the first one.
Read a book called The U.S. Life. Read it, order it while you're listening to this podcast. Don't wait till the end of the podcast, order it right now. That should be the goal as an entrepreneur. The EOS Life is not a specific deliverable. It is a concept. Doing what you love with people you love, making a massive impact, being compensated appropriately for that impact with time to pursue other passions. If that sounds like what you want from your life, read that book. There's the plug. I'll leave it at that. That's a rapid fire.
Phenomenal. And now the next one is related to book as well, so you can go to other books. But what's the best, the top 3 books that you recommend to folks that are trying to make their business more efficient, trying to learn how to delegate, the whole 9 yards around that area.
Who Not How. Super important for getting the right people into your organization. Traction. There's 3 keys to a successful business, I believe. You have to have a peer group, people that can kick your butt when you need it, people that provide a soft shoulder to cry on when you need it, because you will. And that peer group, they serve as your board of directors, and they're free because they're your peer group. The second one is a mentor that helps you skip a whole lot of mistakes. And then the third one is an operating system. EOS is the operating system I use. There are other operating systems out there. EOS is the most simple. It is not the easiest. It has lots of measurables and deliverables and requires work, but it is simple. And simple means that a much larger percentage of your organization can actually understand what you're saying and what you're teaching. Simple, right? Now the execution takes time. I self-implemented EOS into our business because we were broke at the time. And I like to joke that I crammed 18 months of learning into 5 years because that's what it's like when you're self-implementing. This is the truth. You are not running on EOS. You are using EOS tools when you self-implement. That's the factual, accurate truth. It's just too hard to run an entire organization and do a professional job of implementing structure into your business. So, but it significantly moves your company forward using the tools, significantly, right? Then hiring an implementer is, and I hope you have my favorite implementer on your podcast soon.
We will.
Hiring an implementer. So we started implementing in 2015. My wife became an implementer in 2022. And I told her, I was like, babe, just so you know, I am aware. When you come back from training, you're going to have all these things to tell me that we're doing wrong. I am aware. It's just like, I have a lot on my plate. Having an implementer means that within about 18 months, 24 months, you will be running on EOS and your whole life will change. And all the things that you thought you were all rowing in the same direction on will all be flushed out, and you'll find out like, oh crap, all the things I thought my employees knew about where we were going, no one knew because I never said it out loud. Like, oh man, I am the reason the company was held back because everything was in my head. I was either too scared to share it or didn't know enough to share it, right? So Traction will change your life. It is a meaty read. It has tiny font. It has tons of pages. I read it cover to cover twice in 11 days. I recommend the audiobook. If you're like me, where you're a bit scattered, your mind wanders, the audiobook keeps you on pace. Have the book in front of you, have a blank notepad, have a pen on the notepad, and have a highlighter in your hand. My family are all educators. Everyone in my family, siblings, parents. One thing I've learned from them is that the more senses you engage, the higher the retention rate. And so the audio of the audiobook, the touch of holding the book, the visual of reading it, highlighting it, touching it, writing notes on it. And then I would turn to my wife, who was my solo member of my board of directors, and I would regurgitate and tell her, right? So hear, listen, touch, talk, like as many senses as you can engage, do that. Then I went to my staff and I said, guys, I'm pulling out of the office. I'm going to track 300 hours studying this book, and then we're going to do this, right? So Traction changed the trajectory of my business. The third one is Rocket Fuel. Rocket Fuel changed my understanding of my skill set. And, the curse of knowledge means that everything that we know, we think is simple and there's not a lot of value to it because we know it's easy for us, right? So it was easy for me to fall into the trap of thinking the things I were good at, that was just my personality. It's like, okay, but most people don't have your personality. And so what you do, walking out on stage in front of, with 70 employees, walking out in front of 70 employees and not putting my foot in my mouth over and over again is a skill set. Walking out and knowing which stories are going to resonate and picking out, the little girl whose face was ironed and the father put his farm up for rent and he was going to get $1,100 for the year. and have no money and no way to feed his family, but his urgent need was getting surgery to save his daughter's life, right? And he was going to get about half of it. Well, coming in with $2,300 to pay for the plastic surgery, because things are a lot cheaper in developing countries, it changed the trajectory of his family's life. It removed significant worries, right? That is a story that I know will resonate. Is it gruesome? If I show the pictures, it is, so I don't. But is it a story that will catch them and help them to understand the impact that they're having? Yes. Are there hundreds of other stories I could tell? Yes, but we don't have that time. So one of my skills is finding the story that is going to resonate the most and then telling it in a meaningful and productive way that invites even more buy-in, right? That's a skill set. I think that's nothing because it's super easy for me to get up and talk to people. So Rocket Fuel identifies the 2 skill sets that you need to achieve the potential of your organization. I am a visionary. 97 out of 100, visionary. That was my score. When I took the test originally, the scale was 1 to 5, I believe, or something like that. And so the lowest score you could get was a 1 on each question, and I got a 23. It was 20 questions, so my lowest possible score was a 20, and I got a 23. I am not operations. I am not execution, but man, I can get people excited about operations and execution. And so Rocket Fuel was liberating. It made me feel like I had a valuable skill set. It stopped all of the quiet to everybody else, but super loud to me, questioning going on in the back of my head in every meeting I was in. Why am I here? Why did anybody invite me? I don't know anything about this. Because I'm going to have the one inspirational idea, and that's all I'm responsible for. It's everyone else's job to ignore the other 19 ideas I had because they're execution people, operations people. They're like, that's impossible. I'm the dreamer. And so when you read Rocket Fuel and you understand that there's a role in the company for the dreamer, you just have to hire this person. It's clarifying. And as soon as you figure that out, your company explodes, which is what happened to me. So Who Not How, Traction, and Rocket Fuel. I already mentioned the other book. So
US Life was
yeah,
one of
US
them.
Life. So US Life is the 4th one since I already mentioned it.
Phenomenal. And then last 2 questions are what successful, as we wrap up, what successful entrepreneurs do in terms of delegation that unsuccessful entrepreneurs don't. It's you touch a lot on it, so it's
Yeah.
high level there. And then after that, just where people can find you.
Okay. High level, create space for people to fail forward, right? Failing backwards would be repeating the same mistakes over and over again. Your company's not going to survive that long term. You have to, failing is a part of learning because you weren't at the level you're at today when you started. So let somebody else start. Don't make them be at the finish line on day one. So that's the hard thing to do as a person who's executing at an A level. It's really hard to remember all the things that it's hard to remember all the gaps we had when we started. But allow other people to do that. Also, recognize how much you're paying versus the industry. And my friend who's one of the industries that we're in is in a challenging time right now. And so he said, hey, I made a salary cap. I assigned a value to each role, and then I talked to people and I said, hey, this is how much I can pay for this role. If you can do it, awesome. If you can't do it, totally understand. But then understand that if you're not paying top dollar, you can't expect all 5 tools to be in the shed on day one. You have to accept that there's only 3 tools and you're going to teach 2 of them. You have to be okay with that. And so that is I think people that don't scale don't ever fully understand and grasp that. And so they cycle through people because they burn them out really quickly and they make them feel bad about themselves, and they make it hard to show up for work as the best version of themselves because they're not content. They're not happy. They're being told how terrible they are all the time. I had a boss that called me every day at 6:30 a.m. to just kind of gripe about the things I was doing wrong. 2008, there was a housing crisis. There were no jobs to go to. I had no control over it. But every day he called me and told me it eventually would get around to, you should have done a little bit more. I was outperforming him when he had the role because I had the numbers. I could look at it. But he never gave me a chance, right? And so I had no job satisfaction there. I felt terrible about myself. You want to get the best out of people? Making them feel terrible about themselves and making them feel like they're the reason the company's sinking is not a great way to do that. And so be really intentional about the apprenticeship process. Invest the time. I do, you watch. I do, you help. You do, I help. You do, I watch. It doesn't necessarily have to be the founder that's doing that, but somebody in the company is leading them through that. On day one, when I do, you watch is happening, their capacity should not be super high. You can't expect that. Let them surprise you. So just have a realistic expectation of where people are going to start in your organization. So that's I think people are unrealistic. And then they're like, see, told you I couldn't turn anything over. Told you I couldn't delegate. That person's a disaster. Look how terrible that was. It's like, okay, if you were given all of that on your first day, you would have been a disaster too. But look how well you turned out. Let somebody else's flower grow and bloom as well. So that's that. Where to find me? B7family.com. That's where we have all of our family stuff. There's a link to donate if anybody wants to help us. We dig wells, we open schools, we scholarship. We're now at 250 kids attending our school for free. We started at 130. We pay all the teachers' salaries. That was the first well we dug. Is we brought a well to the school to reinforce education, so everybody would come to the school. So if someone wants to jump on that and participate, we would love it. We would love the help. It would be awesome. No dollars come to us, so the bigger that budget gets, the more we can do. And I also have an Instagram account, One Kidney Adventures. I donated a kidney to someone in our community during COVID or 2020. Oh no, actually it was 2023. Actually last year. And it seems like this much time. It was February 3rd, so it's 2323. So easy day to remember. I have that tattooed on my arm. I should remember the date.
Nice.
But yeah, organ donation. I was I had a rough go for 2 to 3 days, but I was in the hospital getting shot up with morphine, so it was fine. And I had one of the hardest recoveries. They give you a scale, and I had one of the hardest recoveries. And within a week, I was totally fine. That was one of the hardest recoveries. So it's not as scary as you think it is.
Wow.
It's an amazing thing to be a part of. And now there's JoBen's kidney running around in somebody else's body, and his daughter gets to have energetic dad who's alive for many more years. They said when we did the surgery, they said they thought he had about 5 weeks left.
Wow.
And so it is super rewarding. I'm a huge fan and advocate for that. And then also look at KidSave. I think kidsave.org, KIDSAVE. It's an opportunity to host kids from other countries who come in. A lot of it's older kids, so we hosted our son through that, and then adopted him afterwards. About 50% of the families who host end up adopting the child, but guess what? 50% of the kids who get adopted are adopted by other families who just meet him because you hosted. And so it's a chance to bring a kid up for we hosted through Colombia. They also host through Ukraine. You can bring kids in to hang out, chill, have a super fun summer. It's about 5-6 weeks. And then your responsibility is telling everybody about this amazing experience you're having. And then they say about 85% of the kids get adopted, half by the family that hosts and half by another family that just meets them or sees them on social media. Remember, we talked about the ways to give, talk. So tell the story on social media about this great kid that just needs a family. So KidSave, organ donation, and b7family.com.
How many hours in the day of this man? You're a beast, JoBen. So, again, so much inspiration. Man.
I delegate a lot.
I delegate. That's the answer.
You're hearing all about the things we do, but I'm not in Cameroon running the projects. I'm not planting any of the stuff at the farm. I'm not coaching any soccer classes. So my job, like I said, is to keep all the planes in the air, not to fly a single plane.
I love you, man. I appreciate that. Thanks for our time today, JoBen. Thanks so much for being on the first episode of that podcast.
Hopefully we set the bar high.